careers are notoriously short, and unless a player retires in the middle of their prime, like a Barry Sanders, an Andrew Luck, or an Aaron Donald, chances are the players are going to have a pretty significant drop-off at some point in their careers. And so today, I want to visit 5 offensive players that could have significant regression in the 2024 NFL season. But before we get into the video, I want to take a second to ask you to please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for notifications. It really helps us out. If you're a fan of the NFL, you'll love this channel as we release multiple NFL-related videos every Tuesday and Friday all year long. Now, without further ado, let's get back to the video. We're going to start with Aaron Rodgers. Now, a lot of people do think that Aaron Rodgers will regress a little bit, but I think it's going to be more than a little bit. I think he's going to be pretty middle of the pack in terms of starting quarterbacks in the NFL in 2024. Aaron Rodgers is going to be turning 40 by the end of this NFL season, and he is coming off of a torn Achilles, and we don't know how well Aaron Rodgers is going to be able to come back from an injury like that, especially given his age. But my prediction of him regressing actually has nothing to do with his injury. This is a prediction I had going into the 2023 season, and we just weren't able to see if it came to fruition because of the injury. But if you look at Aaron Rodgers, he was really good in the 2020 and 2021 season, but in 2022, he had a pretty significant regression compared to his previous seasons with Green Bay. In 2020 and 2021, Aaron Rodgers won the league MVP, leading the Packers to 13-win seasons. But in 2022, the Packers finished 8-9. And yes, they did lose Davante Adams. That's a big loss, but I don't think Davante Adams alone was worth 5 wins for the Green Bay Packers. I think that Aaron Rodgers' drop-off was worth a significant portion of those losses too. And so I'm not sure he's the same quarterback that was winning MVPs. And I don't think most people think that either. But we also haven't seen any quarterbacks outside of Tom Brady be effective going into their 40s. Look at recent Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks that have reached the twilight of their careers. Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan. All of these guys were great quarterbacks, and every one of them, minus Phillip Rivers, won either a Super Bowl or an MVP in the NFL. Yet, every single one of these guys had a pretty significant drop-off. The closest one to not having a drop-off is probably Peyton Manning, because he did win a Super Bowl in his final year. But everybody who watched that final Peyton Manning Super Bowl year knows it was the Broncos' defense winning the Super Bowl in spite of Peyton Manning as opposed to the other way around. And so with Aaron Rodgers entering a new team with a new head coach, coming off a significant injury, and entering his age 40 season, there are so many reasons that this guy is going to regress. Now, don't worry, Jets fans. Even a regressed Aaron Rodgers is still going to be better than Zach Wilson. But I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be comparable to guys like Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield, as well as Kyler Murray in 2023, as opposed to guys like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts, and CJ Stroud, who most people might consider Aaron Rodgers to be in company with in 2024. Next up, we have Joe Mixon, and we all know that running backs who enter their age 30 season tend to drop off pretty significantly. But Joe Mixon's not totally in that camp. Joe Mixon is currently 27 years old, and he's going to be turning 28 years old just before the start of the 2024 NFL season. So he's still a couple years before that pretty significant drop-off that most running backs have. But I still think that Joe Mixon is going to see a pretty significant drop-off because of his move to the Houston Texans. This is not a knock on the Houston Texans' ability to run the ball, nor is this a knock on Joe Mixon hitting a massive wall. It's more of a comment on the fact that Joe Mixon was used hyper-aggressively in Cincinnati. Joe Mixon had the most carries inside the 5-yard line in 2023 of all running backs, and probably was the most of all players outside of like Jalen Hurts with the tush push in Philadelphia. As well, Joe Mixon has been a featured back basically his entire time that he's been a running back in Cincinnati, and he's had significant receiving work too, having more than 60 targets in each of the last 2 seasons in Cincinnati. And so you combine all of this, Joe Mixon has been one of, if not the biggest volume running backs in the NFL over his time in Cincinnati. But he hasn't been as good of a volume back as some of those other top guys like Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, and Josh Jacobs, who are all elite running back options with similar workloads to what Joe Mixon has in Cincinnati. But with Joe Mixon moving to Houston, I think that he's going to get a little bit less goal line carries, a little bit less targets in the passing game, given the Houston Texans didn't really use the running back much in the passing game in 2023. And Joe Mixon's probably going to be in a little bit more of a split backfield. And so if you combine all those factors, chances are Joe Mixon, at least in terms of total numbers, is going to have a pretty decent regression, not because his productivity wanes, but just because his opportunities will wane. A third player that I have that could regress is Keenan Allen. Now, Keenan Allen is going to be 32 years old coming into the 2024 season, but the reason I have him regressing has actually nothing to do with his age again. While he is an older wide receiver, in his age 31 season, he had what I think is definitively the best season of his 6-time Pro Bowl NFL career. Keenan Allen, in 13 games played in 2023, had 1,243 yards, nearly 100 yards per game. That was good enough for 4th in the NFL in yards per game, only behind Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, and CeeDee Lamb, all three of whom are significantly younger, hyper-targeted, and massive talents in the NFL. Keenan Allen is just not that good a receiver, but I'm not saying he's going to regress just from that year. I think he's going to regress all over and be a less than 1,000-yard receiver in 2024. And while age might be somewhat of a factor in that, as I say, it's not the reason I'm picking this. The reason I'm picking this is because of his move from the Chargers to the Bears. And it's not a knock on the Bears. Hear me out. Listen to what I have to say. This is not me knocking the Bears, even though I don't like the Bears as a Lions fan. With the Los Angeles Chargers, Keenan Allen was the definitive number one receiver. Yes, they had Mike Williams in most of the recent years, barring this past year who was injured for most of the year. But even still, Keenan Allen was clearly the number one option. They never really had an effective tight end or an effective wide receiver 3. It's the reason they drafted Quentin Johnson in the first round of the 2023 NFL draft, and that didn't work out great. But Keenan Allen was always the focus of the passing attack with the Chargers, and he had Justin Herbert throwing him the football for the vast majority of the recent seasons. And Justin Herbert is a phenomenal quarterback. I think he's top 5 quarterback in the league. And so when you go over to Chicago, let's start looking at Caleb Williams. Even if Caleb Williams hits a home run in his first NFL season, he's probably not quite as good as Justin Herbert is currently, because Justin Herbert just has more NFL experience. Yes, Caleb Williams could end up being better than Herbert, but he's likely not going to be in his rookie season. Beyond that, the Bears have a significantly better defense than the Chargers ever had, and so the Bears are not going to be playing from behind as much as the Chargers were, so there's less passing attack that's going to need to happen. Beyond that, Keenan Allen is probably not the wide receiver 1 on this team, given the Bears already have DJ Moore, and they drafted Rome Odunze with a top 10 pick in 2024. He'll probably start as the wide receiver 3, but could very well surpass Keenan Allen as the wide receiver 2 if Keenan Allen takes a little bit of time to integrate into the Bears offense. And so you take all this into account, and it's really hard to see Keenan Allen being anywhere close to as effective as he has been with the Chargers, just because situationally, he's not going to have anywhere close to the same opportunity with the Bears as he did with the Chargers. Tack on to the fact that he is getting a little bit older, and the Bears are going to want to put Rome Odunze and DJ Moore into as many opportunities as possible, seeing as they're more of the future for the Bears. And yeah, Keenan Allen is probably going to regress a bit in 2024. Our fourth regression candidate is Travis Kelce, and I know a lot of people have been out there saying Travis Kelce will regress because he's off gallivanting with Taylor Swift, traveling the world, going to their concerts, but I don't think that's impacting Travis Kelce's ability to play football. What I do think is impacting his ability to play football is the fact that he's going to turn 35 years old early on in this NFL season. Travis Kelce was born in 1989. Let's talk about a few other former NFL receivers who were born in 1989. Probably the two biggest future Hall of Fame candidates born in that year are Rob Gronkowski, who hasn't played in the NFL in multiple years and whose last 1,000-yard season was in 2017, and Julio Jones, who has been nothing more than a backup journeyman for the past couple of years, and last 1,000-yard season was in 2019. Travis Kelce has aged as well as any receiver in the NFL, sans maybe Jerry Rice, who just did unfathomable things in the late 90s and early 2000s all the way into his early 40s, but Jerry Rice is a different level. We're not talking about Jerry Rice here. We're talking about Travis Kelce. And we've already seen Travis Kelce drop off a little bit. He had his first non-1,000-yard season in the past 8 years in 2023. Now, it was in a 15-game season because he missed a couple of games, and he still had 984 yards, only 16 shy of 1,000, but still not 1,000 yards. And he just didn't look as productive in the games he did play last year for the Kansas City Chiefs. We were all talking all regular season about how the Kansas City Chiefs offense just didn't look like it had in the past. And a part of that reason was because Travis Kelce just wasn't as effective as he had ever been previously in his career. Now, Kelce did have a phenomenal playoff run when all of a sudden the Chiefs offense looked like it had in every previous season. And so we know he still has that in the tank. But if you're the Chiefs and you're Travis Kelce, you're probably going to try to save that in the tank for a playoff run, knowing that your team likely will go back to the playoffs. And beyond that, the Kansas City Chiefs might have one of their best receiving cores they've had in recent years outside of Travis Kelce in 2024. Yes, Rashee Rice is almost definitely going to get suspended for close to half the season, but he'll still be around for the second half of the season. Beyond that, the Chiefs spent a first-round pick on Xavier Worthy, a very fast wide receiver out of Texas who could be quite effective for them. And they signed Hollywood Brown in free agency, another speedster wide receiver. And so that's three really good receiving options, at least for the second half of the season, that the Chiefs should have. And so Travis Kelce just won't need to be involved as much. And so I expect Kelce to regress a little bit during the 2024 season as he tries to save his body and his productivity for an inevitable playoff run that we all know the Chiefs are going to be on in 2024. And our final regression candidate is Davante Adams. Adams is a 31-year-old wide receiver, and we have to look no further than Keenan Allen to talk about a wide receiver who can be extremely effective in their age 31 season. But I don't think Davante Adams is going to have the same level of success as a guy like Keenan Allen did this late in his career. The reason why is that Davante Adams already fell off a fair bit in 2023 with mediocre quarterback play coming from Jimmy Garoppolo and Aiden O'Connell. And this year, the quarterback play in Vegas isn't going to be much better. There's still Aiden O'Connell, and instead of Jimmy Garoppolo, you have Gardner Minshew. Now, I love Gardner Minshew as an NFL meme, but he's not the best quarterback in NFL history. I think we can all agree on that one. Now, Davante Adams has been able to maintain a high level of productivity since moving to Vegas, but the main reason for that high level of productivity staying on is because his targets have skyrocketed. When he was in Green Bay, Davante Adams was about a 72% plus in terms of his receptions per target. Since he's gone to Vegas, he's been below 60% in completions per target. The reason he's been so successful is because his highest two targeted years are his 2 years in Vegas. But his quarterback play is going down, he's getting older, and Vegas no longer has Josh Jacobs to force teams to load the box a little bit to defend against a highly productive running back. What that means is that teams are going to be able to focus all their defensive effort on Davante Adams. And yes, this could be a similar story to what happened with the Los Angeles Chargers and Keenan Allen last year. And that ended up with Keenan Allen being hyper-productive. But I think the difference with Davante Adams and Keenan Allen is that Keenan Allen had a really, really good quarterback in Justin Herbert throwing them the ball. So even though teams were able to hyper-focus on Allen, Herbert could still put the ball in the right place for his guy to get it. As opposed to the Raiders, who I just don't think have the same level of offensive capability from their quarterbacks, either Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew, to do what Justin Herbert did with Keenan Allen last year. And so while I still think Davante Adams is going to be targeted a ton, and while he could be very productive because of how much he's targeted, I do think he's going to regress a little bit given the fact that he's just going to be covered everywhere he goes. But that's it for my top 5 offensive regression candidates. Let me know down in the comments below who you think is going to regress in 2024 and who you think might become an ageless wonder. Either way, I'll see you all next time. Peace!